Good morning, Friday, all day. Welcome to Penn Vicarage. Hope you are cheerful, hope you're well. Good to see the sun shining through the window. Really looking forward to having a good weekend in church this weekend. We would love to see you. Also, we had a great thing yesterday because we had our first funeral in church for the first time in about 4 months yesterday. It's really good. The church is open for the ministry, all parts of life, and it was really good to have people in church for that yesterday. And like I said, hope to see lots of you this weekend. Now, for this morning's reading, you're going to put your thinking caps on a bit, but here goes. Reminding you of the context, we're picking up from yesterday. Jesus is in Jerusalem for the final showdown. He's coming on a donkey, and things he's doing, things he's saying are rattling cages. The authorities are not liking him at all, and they've already decided they're going to get rid of him. And if you remember we talked about a couple of days ago, that story when they had a go at him about the authority of John. Today you might call second attempt. And having tried a different way, we talked about a couple of days ago, they tried a different approach this morning. Stealth and flattery. Fasten your seatbelts, here goes, picking up the story. Luke's Gospel, chapter 20, beginning to read at verse 20. So they watched him and sent spies who pretended to be honest in order to trap him by what he said, so as to hand him over to the jurisdiction and the authority of the governor. So they asked him, "Teacher, we know you are right in what you say and teach, and that you show deference to no one, but teach the way of God in accordance with truth. Is it lawful for us to pay taxes to the emperor or not?" But he perceived their craftiness and said to them, "Show me a denarius. Whose head and whose title does it bear?" They said, "The emperor's." He said to them, "Then give the emperor the things that are the emperor's, and to God the things that are God's." And they were not able in the presence of the people to trap him by what he said, and being amazed by his answer, they became silent. And this is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. So, as I say, rather than coming in person, they send spies pretending to be honest. The word is actually dikai, which means righteous. They send these spies sort of stealthily pretending to be righteous. And they arrive, and I guess the technique Jesus would have seen through them straight away. They start with flattery. "Oh, we know what a great teacher you are. You teach honesty and integrity." Oh, they start with the general flannel to kind of soften him up, you might say. And then they say, "Should we pay taxes to the emperor or not?" Now, actually, to be fair to them, this is a very difficult question, and you can see why they asked it, because they're trying to trip him up. Because on the one hand, bear in mind this is an occupied country, occupied by the Romans. Had Jesus said, "You shouldn't pay taxes to the emperor," then they would have said, "Hang on, Mr. Roman governor, this man here pretending people shouldn't pay taxes, he's a revolutionary, get rid of him." That's what they'd have said. On the other hand, if Jesus has said, "You should pay taxes," then the people who'd been occupied would have said, "Hang on a minute, he's selling out here to the nasty Romans." So whatever happens, if he said, "You shouldn't pay taxes," the Romans would have got him. If he said, "You should pay taxes," then the crowd would have got him. You might say a no-win situation. What Jesus does is very clever. Asks for a picture, asks to see a coin, who's insignificant to this, and then he says, "Give the emperor what is the emperor's, and to God what is God's." Fantastic answer. And you could simply say, just look at the story and just be in tremendous admiration of Jesus' incredible wisdom. I mean, what an answer. I mean, it just blows them away. It's a superb answer. And if that's all you want to do this morning, then just admire the wisdom of Jesus and get back to your cornflakes. I think on the other hand, though, I don't want to get us off the hook quite that easily, because Jesus says this thing. He says, "Give to the emperor what is the emperor's, and give to God what is God's." And I'd like us to think for a minute about what this means. Because, as I read in the book last night, this is notoriously difficult to try and understand. To try and interpret it for us today is notoriously difficult. And people have tried various cop-outs. It has been suggested in the past that God is the only king, therefore tribute should only be paid to God, therefore you shouldn't pay taxes. Nice try. But I don't think so. It does not time with what Jesus says elsewhere in his life. At one point, he actually gets a tax coin out of the mouth of a fish. It doesn't fit what Jesus says or what the rest of the Bible says. So, nice try, but No, you can't do that one. I'm afraid we've got to pay our taxes. And quite right too. Another thing another idea has been said is that what Jesus is saying is this, is that there are spiritual things that come under God and there are human things that come under the rulers. And that you should combat your life. There's your spiritual side and your earthly side. But I'm afraid I can't go with that one either. The Bible I read tells me that Jesus is Lord of all, and actually God is King of everything, and you simply cannot compartmentalize your life like that. That won't do either. So what does it mean? Well, I'm thinking long and hard, and I'm not going to give you any big answers this morning, but I do think it's important we think about it. I think it goes like this, and you can agree or disagree as you please. God is King. God is King, King of kings, Lord of all. God, that has to be. God is one. God is number one. But God, in his infinite goodness and mercy, knows that human beings need law and order. Actually, without law and order, it's anarchy, and that's absolutely terrifying, especially for the weak and the vulnerable. So God knows that we need us. So while God is number one, what God does is, for temporal authority, God delegates it to rulers, okay, for the sake of humankind. So under God, he delegates temporal rule, you might say. Which is why, as Christians, I believe the Bible says that we have a Christian duty to submit to human authorities under God. And that is part of our Christian duty. That does not say we have to agree with them or vote for them. Of course we don't. That's not to say, it also does not say we shouldn't try and change their minds. Christians should absolutely be at the centre of justice and looking after the right and trying to change society for the good. And I'm thrilled to bits that we've got 3 councillors, for example, in our congregation, and that before the election we were able to hold a hustings in the church. And it's absolutely right that Christians are there at the centre trying to change things and change things for the better. But it doesn't mean we've got to always agree with them. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't try and change them, but it does mean that we should submit to them. We should pay our taxes, we should be good citizens, and we should give a full part of society, and we should try and be a blessing to our community. Absolutely right. So God comes first, but God has delegated human authority, and therefore as Christians we have a duty to submit to it. The complication comes when the temporal rulers forget that God is first. I think it's fantastic in this country that our Queen Elizabeth goes to church every week because she knows actually that she comes under a higher authority. The problems come when rulers start thinking that they're number one when God is. And that's why you've got problems like Kim Jong-un, where he thinks that he's supreme authority. It happens when rulers, like happened with Daniel in the Old Testament, in the lion's den and so on, start making people, they start thinking that they're above God. And sometimes, of course, rulers and countries and so on put people in such a position where either they can't give God the worship that God is due, or they ask people to do things that are so morally unjust that it just does not square with putting God first. And that is where there are times when to obey God means that we have to not do what the authorities are saying. But in that case, and that happens sometimes, we have to submit to them even then. We have to do so with humility, we have to do so with patience and prayer and in the fullness of God. I end with a story about a great hero called Thomas More, who was a friend actually of Henry VIII, King Henry VIII. But King Henry VIII puts Thomas More in a position where Thomas More felt that it was a loyalty, he was demanding a loyalty which is only due to God. Because, as I said, God comes first, but under God we have rulers to rule over us. And the point of his execution, the speech he gave before he lost his life, Thomas More said beautiful words which I think say it all. He said, "I die the king's servant, but God's first." Render to Caesar that which is Caesar, render to God what is God's. Notoriously difficult to understand. Hope I've given you something to think about.